Today on our 2016 Forest River Salem Hemisphere Light Travel Trailer, we're going to show you how to install the LaSalle Bristol XTRM roof membrane. This is what our roof membrane is going to look like when it's installed. What are some of the reasons that we would need a new roof? One, maybe we have an old camper, it's got some leaks in it. Another reason, we're restoring a camper and we want to make sure that the roof we're putting on, or the roof membrane that we're going to be putting on, is a good material that's going to last. A third reason, what if we bought a camper and maybe the old roof was not properly maintained, it's got cracks, it's dried up, it's going to cause leaks, leak into the inside of the camper, mold, mildew. It's going to cost a lot of extra money if we have to start replacing everything inside. What are some of the reasons to choose a PVC roof membrane over some of the other materials? A lot of your campers are going to come out with a rubber roof or rubber-like roof that have to be treated once every 1 to 2 years. That means you're going to have to get up on your roof, clean it, and then put a conditioner on it so that it doesn't dry out and crack. Unlike some of the other membranes out there, once you install your PVC membrane, it's going to be maintenance free. You can rest assured you're going to have years of coverage backed by a 15-year warranty. Another benefit to the PVC membrane is, let's say you're camping and you have a tree branch that falls on the top and may put a tear in it. You take an extra piece, take some PVC cement, put it over the top, and you can chemically weld that piece to your top to give it a permanent bond, unlike some of the other roofing materials out there that will only accept a temporary patch. As far as the installation goes on this, it's not a difficult task. Just keep in mind that it is not a one-day job. It is going to take a couple days. It's monotonous and a little time-consuming. Another great benefit to having the PVC membrane over some of the other materials out there is your roof's going to stay, on average, up to 20 degrees cooler, which means that it can keep the interior of the camper up to 2 to 3 degrees cooler. One downside to the PVC material is once you tear off your old roof, if you have particle board, this material, the PVC membrane, is going to show any underlying imperfections. Now, that being said, this is a roof, this is maintenance free, so you're not going to have to get back up here. But if that is a concern for you, suggestion is to maybe lay down some Luan over the top of your particle board to give it a nice, clean, smooth look. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let me show you how I installed it. Before we start our installation on our roof membrane, we need to prep our area, which means we need to remove everything on the top of our roof and everything along the sides of the roof. Anything that's holding our roof or our membrane down, we need to remove. Now we're going to start with our tracks here on the sides. Our roof top or our membrane actually rolls down and is underneath the back side of it. So we're going to start taking this off. There's a plastic piece that runs right down the stairs that covers our screws. Probably going to have some sealant on the ends that we're going to need to remove also. To get their track off, or our rubber insert here, and what I want to try to do is save this so I can use it after we get our new roof on. Peel out this end here. You can see here I'm just using a putty knife. We're going to have a square bit. You use a square head, and actually it looks like on this trailer, most of your travel trailers and RVs use square bits. It looks like you could use a Phillips head screwdriver too, the way they have them made. So we'll go ahead and take that screw out. And then we're going to pop this piece off here, so like that. And this stuff should just pull right out. And you can see we have screws that are going to go all the way down the side of the trailer. So we'll go ahead and pull our plastic out, and then take our screws out, pull this piece off. You're going to have some sticky stuff on the back. It's not real sticky, but it is back there. It's called butyl tape. You can see here, when you run your screw in, it gets a little bit on the threads, and it seals that hole to keep any water from getting inside. Now where our gutter comes down to the end, you can see our roof rubber actually goes underneath of it. There's a piece of aluminum cap that kind of comes over this corner. Actually, it comes over both corners here in the back. We're going to have to peel up all this. There's some screws, and then that plastic trim piece that was inside is inside of this, and we're going to peel it back kind of down this edge a little bit to get a few of those screws. The rubber part of the roof is going to come down, and you'll be able to see it where this back track and this one meet. This stuff here is just self-leveler. It comes off pretty easy. We're just going to bend this up enough that we're able to get to a roof. As you're taking this stuff off, take note because there's a couple different sealers you're going to be using. Anywhere that you have caulking down on like the sticker pieces, so make sure you don't just start pulling it off because you will peel off the stickers. So on this particular camper, this piece that our awning is attached to is one piece. So what I'm going to try to do is, because my awning is electric, it's not the pull-out one, I rolled it out a little bit. I'm going to take this rail off. Hopefully I can leave this attached on here and not have to take it off, and the arms will support it. You can see here what I've done is I've actually tied a piece of string here so that when I pull this off, the weight of this is not pulling on my canopy. I can let it rest on top of the string, and I'll put another one down at the other end just to support it. Now we'll go ahead and take this rail off and we'll go from there. Now we've got the back and the two sides done. Now here at the front, we have two trim pieces that run across the front. I was hoping I would only have to take off the back, but the front actually runs under about halfway under that front one. So it looks like we're gonna have to take off both of them. We're gonna take them off the same way, peel off the self-leveling sealant on the top, and then you're just gonna have some screws that hold that down. Now, as far as removing our vents and air conditioners on the top of our roof, all you need to do is pull that stuff off. You pull the screws out, and there's some sealer tape underneath of it that runs along the edge. You can take it and just pull it off. So these are pretty easy to get off. And then you'll have your opening, and your top, or your rubber top, actually folds down inside and is probably stapled inside. As far as our smaller vents here that are for our bathrooms, you're going to have some screws that go around the edge. Again, clear off your self-leveling sealant, pull out your screws. You should be able to pull this off. You can see here where the membrane rolls over to the side. There's butyl tape underneath of there. You need to make sure when you're pulling this off, you take the butyl tape off also. We need to make sure that our sides are clean so when we lay the new stuff down, it lays down evenly. Once you have everything removed, we're going to start peeling off the membrane. Keep in mind that not all the membranes are going to peel off the same. Some of them may be a little bit tougher. As long as you take your time, you'll get it off. We'll start here in the back. And we're just going to slowly start pulling it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay out about a 4-foot section. Before we lay it down, if you have paneling like this underneath, what we need to do is, if you notice this spot here, how it kind of pulled up some wood when we pulled up our old top, we need to kind of fill that in and smooth it so that when we lay our new membrane down, we don't see it dip. We're going to use a low sag to no sag sealant, and we're just going to squirt a little bit in there, like that. What we want to do is smooth out those edges. Once we've filled all of our imperfections, we're going to take our adhesive, we're going to dump a little bit on. What we're going to try to get is about a 2x2 circle, something like that. Take a roller, just a regular paint roller, and we're going to start spreading it. And you want a milky white film. This tape that runs down your seams here. If there's any part of this tape that may be damaged, you want to make sure you put some new tape on it. This tape here is just some drywall mesh tape, and you can find this at any hardware store. So if you remember, we had a cord here. There's a couple holes. What we need to do is when we get to a spot like that, all we're going to do is we're going to cut an X in it. Take our squeegee, make sure it's a white squeegee, and we're going to start working the air out. And it may be easier May go a little bit quicker if you have a second person. Maybe that can start squeegeeing one side while you're squeegeeing the other. All we're trying to do is we want to work out these air bubbles. Another good tip is if you kind of get here right in the middle, if you don't want to get your top dirty, get you a piece of cardboard like this. Just do it like that. You're just going to start working everything out to the edges. Now, as you're rolling your membrane out, anywhere you had your air conditioners, the openings in the roof, you're going to want to cut them out. And how we're going to do that is, if you can see my cut here, what I'm doing is I'm going corner to corner. Just take a knife, you push down on the corner just a little bit, you can find it. We're basically cutting an X so that these sides will roll in, and eventually we'll staple them down. Another cutout that we're going to have to do is on your vent pipes that are coming from your bathrooms that look like this pipe here. What you're going to need to do is have somebody hold the roll up. Go ahead and get it to that spot, and you want to cut big enough that it's going to go over the top of it. So I'll cut it out here. We'll go just outside of that. Lay that down, then we can make minor adjustments to our top. So we want to make sure we're getting the air bubbles. It's sitting pretty flush around it. We are going to have a cap that goes over it. We're going to seal around that too. We just don't want an air bubble under there. Let's see if we can get this out. If for some reason you get an air bubble in there that won't come out, what you may need to do is grab the end of it, lift it up, stretch it, and then lay it back down. It's easy if you have somebody here, take your squeegee and run right up the center, and then work to the outside on both sides. Now what we've done here up on our nose, you'll notice this front part. We've actually cut our top about an inch past it. What we want to do is we want to take that part, we're going to lift this, and we're going to tuck this underneath because this is the direction of travel. We don't want any wind to get under there because it will lift the top up. So what we'll do is we can take a putty knife. You can also see our adhesive here. We didn't go all the way up. We'll take a putty knife, and if you lift, we'll take this and kind of roll it down in there. Let's see if I can get this spot there. And then you can use a screwdriver too. I don't want to poke a hole in it, so I'm using a trim panel tool. And all we're going to do is we're going to work it down to the outside edges. Once you get your adhesive on your back half, you get your top pulled down, get all your air bubbles out. Take this back half and you're going to roll it up to this edge, just like this. Next, we're going to take our butyl tape that comes in our kit. We're going to have a couple different sizes. They're going to be a wider width. We're going to use the skinnier width first. And what we're going to do is we're going to run it about, you can kind of see the line here where our old butyl tape was. It's going to go right up along this edge, top edge. We're just going to peel it off. You can kind of push it into place as you're going. You can work with it. It's not, when you stick it on, it's not going to stay there right away. This is more of a water barrier sealer between your two pieces, so just work it as you go. Take your time. Now what we're going to do is peel the paper off, or butyl tape that we just put on. We're going to take our membrane, we're going to pull it over, pull it down, pull it taut. Make sure you don't have any air bubbles. And where your butyl tape is, we're going to put a staple right underneath of it. I'm going to start right here in the center. And all we're doing with the staple is making sure that this stays tight. Just like that. We'll just work our way to each side. Again, make sure your air bubbles are out. Make sure you don't have any creases or anything like that in there. We'll just throw a few staples in. Now we'll take our termination bar. We're going to put our adhesive butyl tape on the back. You want to make sure you use an adhesive butyl tape and not putty tape. The difference, putty tape is going to break apart. Adhesive butyl tape, it will actually stretch. We're going to find our existing holes. You can see I have a little punch here. I found a hole here from where this piece was on before. I poked it through. I'll line up my piece here, find out which hole it's going to be. I'm actually going to poke it through that hole. Next, we're going to line up our holes. Take our screws and just start reinstalling. I'm going to start from the center here because our piece kind of has an angle to it, and just work my way to both sides. We'll just kind of bend it as we go. So now what we need to do is we need to run, just like we did here on the back, we need to run our butyl tape from front to back or back to front. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a little strip here. It's easier, it's better to do it in one solid strip. That way you don't have to try to mend two pieces together. But I'm going to show you with a small piece. You can see this white metal cap here. The screw holes, we actually want to cover those screw holes with our butyl tape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it over the edge of this metal strip, and as long as I'm covering both, I'm good. Our trim piece that we're going to be putting on top, it's going to have another piece of butyl tape on the back of it, and it will actually sit on top of this one. This one will sit down like this underneath. The top one will sit on top of this, on top, and what they're going to do is basically they're going to butt together, and our membrane is actually going to run in between them. So we'll go ahead and put this on first. And then once you have your strip that goes all the way to the front, peel this off. I'm going to reiterate again, even though I showed you on the back. What I would do is pull, before you put the butyl tape on, pull this down a little tight, and go ahead and mark your holes where your existing holes are. That way when you put your piece up, you can line them up and just go through and put your screws back in. You can see here I've already done that. So now we'll go ahead and get our butyl tape on. We'll get this pulled down, and then we'll show you the next step. Next thing we want to do is your in gutter pieces here. These need to be installed before you install your trim piece that's going to go in between. The reason is that trim piece actually sits inside of here. So make sure I get it lined up in the right place. And we'll pull this down and kind of stick it to your butyl tape, and that'll also help hold it tight for the time being. Get that in. And then go ahead and put your screw in. Some of these may only have one, some of them may have two screws in them. Next, what we're going to do is pull down just a little bit on your top and then stick it to your butyl tape as you go. Then you're going to take a staple and you're going to put it in between each screw hole. You want to make sure that it's on the butyl tape. Now I've gone ahead, set my trim piece inside of the end of my gutter here. What I'm going to do is I lined up one, I'm going to skip a couple, and I'll throw a few screws in as I go. This is going to help me, rather than hitting every single one. If I get a couple of them in place, my other ones will line right up. And we're just using the same screws that we took out. Once you get it up, you get all your screws in, just take your knife, pull this out a little bit away from the side, and just, all you gotta do is make sure you have a sharp blade. But all you gotta do is just run it along there. Run it right along this bottom edge, and you cut it right off up to that. So once we get our trim pieces back in place, we need to seal them. We're going to put self-leveling sealer on top of these. There's a couple different ones. There's one that comes in your kit. It's going to look like this. This can only be used on PVC roofs. It cannot be used on any other type of roof because it will not adhere to it. This is another self-leveling. This one will work on any roof. We're actually going to be using this on this part here so it adheres to the fiberglass top. You're also going to need non-sag. So you can see the difference here. Self-leveling, when you put it on, it will actually spread out, where the non-sag is more like a caulk. You put a bead, and this is going to be used for your outside edges along the sides. If you remember how the manufacturer had it when you took it off, they kind of go up the sides and kind of go over the screw holes or the screws. You can see this edge, they kind of put a piece of tape on there so that when it falls on, they can rip the tape up and it leaves a line. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to follow exactly how they did it. I just want to make sure my edges are covered, my center's covered, and my screws are covered. So however you do that, as long as it's sealed, you'll be good. I'm going to run it about right on the inside of the screw, or this back side, let it fall down. When I run this outside edge, then I'll run one in the middle and make this one a little thicker so that they meet. So you can see how our self-leveler kind of is spreading out, but it's not getting enough to cover my screws. So I'm just going to put a glob of it on each one. Now what we need to do is seal our ends. We're going to go about to the second screw in, and we're actually going to cover this whole thing. So we're going to go back and forth over both sides and both pieces to about right here. What we want to make sure we don't do is put enough down here where it's going to sag, because it is self-leveling, where it sags and drips down onto the side. Just like that. And as we leave it sit, it'll start to sag a little bit over this edge. Before you start putting your air conditioner and your vents back in place, take your top, pull it down inside your cutouts, pull it taut, and throw a couple staples in it just to hold it tight. Anything that you're putting back on your roof, with the exception of the air conditioners, you want to make sure that you're putting butyl tape around the screw holes before you put it down on the top. You want that seal on the bottom, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take some self-leveling sealer, and we're going to put it over the edge so it will cover the whole thing. Another thing I want to mention is, for a vent like this, you want to make sure you're installing it the correct way. You notice that where the hinge is facing the direction of travel. You don't want this facing the direction of travel, because you're either going to get this or you're going to take or potentially break the lid off, and we don't want to do that. So now what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and put our self-leveler on. We're going to go around this edge first, and don't be afraid to squirt it on there. The more coverage you have, the better seal you're going to have. Now we're going to put a real thick bead around the inside, and all that is going to start flowing and kind of level itself out somewhere outside of that. So you can see how our self-leveling sealant is starting to kind of run together. It's starting to flatten out a little bit. The longer it sits, it's going to start leveling out even more. I've got a couple other vents that I did earlier that I can show you what it looks like when it starts settling even more. This right here is a vent to one of the bathrooms. You can see how it's starting to really look nice once it settles really good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start sealing the top of our trim piece here and all around the edge of our gutter to make sure no water is going to get in behind it. For this application, we're going to use non-sag because we don't want it to run down the side of the camper. Before I start, a little bit of advice. The way I'm going to show you how to do this. Grab yourself a wet towel and a dry towel. Start here, we're going to fill this in good. Get it all along the edge. Up in here. We don't want any water to get in. You can kind of see where the old stuff was. I'm going to come out a little bit past that. Now we'll start doing the top of our trim piece here. This is where your wet and your dry towel is going to come in. The dry one's just basically when you're not using your caulk gun, you can set it down and it's not dripping on anything. The wet one is going to be to keep your finger wet. If you've never used a caulk gun, cut your end in an angle, kind of like that. It's going to make it easier to put it on, and don't cut a huge hole in it. And what you're going to do is you want to turn that angle kind of diagonal right in the corner of it. And we're just going to lay a fairly thin bead. Don't make it like real thick. So I'm going to show you a trick to make it smooth. Like this, just run you a bead right into that corner. Take your finger and get it wet. And you don't want to push. All you do is want to rest it. Kind of rest it right on the edge of your trim piece here in your roof. You're just going to drag your finger. And this is if you feel comfortable doing it this way. If not, just run you a bead up there and just make sure that it's sealing the gap between the two. One thing to keep in mind is on your side pieces are going to be two separate pieces. Where those two pieces meet, you want to make sure you fill that in with your sealant. We're going to do the same thing with our gutter down here. Just make sure you cover all of your seams so no water can get behind. And then our end caps at least cover your screw holes, your edges, and the front edge. And make sure you cover it good. You can kind of see how I have it here. Again, you're going to use a self-leveling on this top part. And then our final couple steps outside here is once you have your sealer on, go ahead and put that plastic trim piece in that covers up all of your screws. And then you want to seal the end of that and the screw holes that are holding it in place. Now we've let our camper sit overnight. It's a good idea to come back and check over anywhere that you put sealant down. You can see right here along these edges, there's an air bubble right there. We want to make sure that we fix that spot. Because if we don't, we're going down the road, the wind may pop that open and then you have a hole and you'll have the chance of getting water in there. So just make sure you go over everywhere, check it out, and fix any spots that need to be fixed. That'll do it for a look at an installation on the LaSalle Bristol Extreme Roof Membrane.